Gave me something new. Because the scriptures say 2/3 are going to be cut off and die, right? So the third part that's going to be left, how is the 2/3 going to come back? The 2/3 are going to come back through the 1/3. The 1/3 that make it out of here, out of this destruction, from being here in Babylon, and the ones that are scattered throughout the rest of the four corners of the earth that the angels pick up and take in the chariots. When we come back down to this earth after the destruction, the ones that die are going to be bred back by the ones that make it. 2/3 are going to be cut off and die, but they're going to come back in the kingdom as the children of the 1/3. They're going to come back and they're going to get it right this time. And this side right here, they're going to have to be sacrificed.
It shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my God.
Isaiah 60 and 21 and 22, the points in 22. Thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in his time. So this is talking about when we're set up in the kingdom, a little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. That's talking about the men of Israel. We're going to have so many children. One man is going to have 1,000 children, and then another man is going to have so many children. It's going to be like a strong nation, and it's just going to be his children. And each man, we're going to multiply like that. We're going to have children upon children. But like I said, the Lord is going to restore us. He's going to restore us in the kingdom. We're going to get that ancient world stature and strength. We're going to get all that back.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners, whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right. And what I want to get into today, was going into pretty much a continuation of a lesson I did yesterday, going into the 5 phases of colonialism. Okay. And what we have to understand, that last phase, went to indoctrination of the people that you conquered. All right. And what we've seen on the scale like never before. Okay, because this devil Esau Edom, he has the technology, to indoctrinate on another level, far more than any of these heathens have ever had. Okay, and as he has, the masses of the world assimilate, to this devil. Okay, which the worst is here in America. All right, the heart of the beast. This devil has indoctrinated the masses. All right, to fit his pieces in his system, okay, and not to think outside of the box, okay, or the reality that he's presented, okay, of the curriculum that he's presented. What he presents is prosperity. What he presents as success. Okay, and on the flip side, what he demonizes, okay, and he's taught people to be one way, and that one way benefits his system moving forward. Okay, because it's all about the masses benefiting the few. Okay, which is a complete opposite because the rulership is supposed to benefit the masses. All right, and by default, the rulers, there's perks for being in rulership. Okay, but this devil, he's ass backwards. He's an unfit ruler. Okay, so he has a setup, okay, to where the masses benefit him. Okay, and even this whole system called capitalism, well, is based on he's capitalizing off the labor and the energy of the masses. Okay, he make it seems as if everybody has a chance to come up from nothing, but no. All right, that's not so. That's a part of the promises. All right, that he sprinkles into his indoctrination. Going all the way back to the serpent. When he told Eve, "You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil, and you shall not surely die." Well, he put promises, okay, within. As he was indoctrinating Eve, what was he doing? He was sprinkling in promises, man. Okay, so as we're at the last phase of colonialism, which is indoctrination, okay, and I say it was, it was able to spread through TV programming. First it started off with magazines, newspapers, and then it went to TV programming. Okay, then it went to the internet. All right, and then the internet to social media. Okay, so now we're in this phase of colonialism. Okay, where there's heavy indoctrinations, and that's why it's so powerful that the Lord, awaken us out of these indoctrinations, man. Okay, so and let's go here. Let's get this in Revelation. Then we'll go into the video, and we'll add, as needed. But when you go into Revelation 20:7, all right, it says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. And this was speaking, Esau, Edom, okay, which he comes in the energy of Satan, Shaitan, the adversary to righteousness, man. All right, and he's been loosed out of his prison, all right, to come rule because for 1,000 years, the Lord had this man sealed off, okay, from being able to come back in power. You know, he existed, on the outbounds of society, over there in the Caucasus Mountain, Georgia, Russia, okay, the Ukraine region, you know, um, uh, you know, he was most prominent then as the Khazars, all right, which they was mainly used, for proxy, these the powers of the earth, the different, the you had Jake, during the Byzantine Empire, you had the Islam, different caliphates. Okay, you had the Mongolian Empire. Okay, you had the different Turkish tribes. Okay, they had a little influence, but mainly Jake and Ishmael, and you had Elam, the Parthians. Okay, but Esau, he wasn't a major player on the global stage. He was off to the side. Okay, but out of that 1,000 years, the Lord allowed this man, all right, to elevate and become, all right, the top nation in the earth, man. Okay, that's why his era, okay, of promotion was called what? The Renaissance. Okay, and in the Renaissance, all right, not only his authority, okay, but his culture, all right, was rebirthed in the earth, man. Medicine, philosophy, all right, science, okay, infrastructure, concrete building, okay, building with concrete, okay. So this devil, he rebirthed, okay, Rome back into the earth, all right, and his rebirth came with a lot of deception. That's why, all right, when you read verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together in battle, the number of whom is the sand of the sea. So he will go forth to deceive the nations. Okay. So from the Renaissance now, he has colonized the earth. First he conquered with the sword. Okay. Then he began, to steal resources. all right, all the world's wealth. Okay, then he had forced labor, you see, and then he created division amongst the locals. All right, and now he's in the phase of indoctrination. Okay, which is great deception. Okay, the majority of what most people believe is a lie. Most people, everything that they believe is a lie, man. People go to church on Sunday. Okay, they buy into this man's economy, which is a scam. Okay, they buy into his politics, which is a scam. They buy into his you know his want to be careful, all right, his pharmaceutical, okay, system, which is a scam. Okay, everything, the standard American diet, a scam. Damn near everything that you can buy is a food product. Okay, which is you know food is scarcely found in it. Real food is scarcely found in these products. Is mostly chemicals, man. So this man has deceived the world in every way possible, man. Especially here in America. Now let's go here. Now this is going to touch on the school system. This video, but it spills over to everything. Entertainment. You know, social life. Okay, everything that you can think of. All right, indoctrination for control that spilled into. Okay, so let's get this video. All right, and this is see, this is fair use. All right, fair use. I'm not making any monetary gain or profit for educational purpose only. So let's play this. All right, subscribe to this. And I'll go ahead and put the clip in the description box. They have a few good videos. Uh,
School isn't education, it's control, Machiavelli warned us. Imagine this. You're 6 years old. You're full of questions, energy, and a wild, untamed hunger to explore the world. You ask why the sky is blue, why people lie, why birds fly south in the winter. And what does the world do in response to this beautiful chaos of curiosity? It puts you in a room with rows of desks, a bell that rings every hour, and someone at the front telling you when to speak, when to sit, when to write, and, most importantly, what to think. It's called school, but is that really education? Or is it something more subtle and more sinister? Let's start with a brutal truth. We confuse schooling with learning, but the two are not the same. Education, in its raw, original form, is liberation, is the unfolding of the mind, it's the awakening of consciousness. But schooling, as it exists today, is about conformity, it's about control. And if that sounds like a conspiracy theory, maybe that's because you were taught to think that way in school.
I'm throwing a party. This is going to be my biggest book ever. No, not like that. This is going to be my biggest book.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Machiavelli, the philosopher of power, manipulation, and human nature, understood something most modern thinkers are too uncomfortable to admit, that institutions are rarely what they claim to be. They are, more often than not, instruments of control disguised as virtues. He saw through the illusions of morality that rulers used to manipulate the masses, and he'd have seen through modern schooling just as clearly, because what is school if not a perfectly designed mechanism for producing obedience under the guise of enlightenment? Think about it. The structure of school mirrors the structure of a prison. Bells, schedules, uniforms, surveillance, punishment for deviation. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Ask yourself, what's the first thing school teaches you? Is it math, language, science? No. The first thing school teaches you is how to be managed, how to wait for permission, how to suppress your instincts, how to sit still even when your body wants to move, and how to speak only when asked, how to memorize what you're told without questioning why. And here's where it gets darker, because this isn't just about discipline. It's about shaping your soul into something useful to someone else. School doesn't teach you how to think. It teaches you what to think. It rewards obedience and punishes originality. It tells you there's one right answer, one correct method, one way to succeed. And who benefits from that? Not you, not your creativity, not your freedom, but the system, the economy, the machine. Machiavelli would have recognized this instantly. He believed that rulers must maintain control not just through force, but through illusion, through spectacle, through institutions that appear to serve the people, but actually serve power. And what better illusion than school? An institution where you believe you're being equipped for life, while actually being conditioned to fit a mold. And the most diabolical part is that it works so well, we don't even question it. We're too busy chasing grades, diplomas, degrees, external validations that keep us locked in a cycle of performance and approval. Let me ask you something dangerous. When was the last time school taught you something that changed your life? Not something that got you a good grade, not something that helped you pass a test, but something that transformed how you see the world, how you love, how you suffer, how you live. If you're struggling to answer, maybe that's the point. Maybe school was never meant to do that. Because real education is dangerous. It makes you question everything. It makes you ungovernable. It gives you the tools to dismantle the very systems that try to shape you. And no power structure wants that. No ruler wants citizens who ask, why does this system exist? So instead, they give you school, a socially acceptable cage, a place where you spend the most intellectually fertile years of your life, learning how to be quiet, polite, and useful. Now, before you think I'm just ranting, let me clarify, there are great teachers. There are moments of magic. There are classrooms where minds awaken, but those are exceptions, not the rule. The system wasn't built for enlightenment. It was built for efficiency, for predictability, for control. And here's the Machiavellian twist. The system doesn't need to be evil to be effective. It just needs to be useful to those in power. That's the genius of Machiavelli's insight. He saw that systems don't sustain themselves through cruelty alone. They sustain themselves by convincing you they're necessary, that they're for your good, that they're natural. And once you believe that, you'll defend the very thing that limits you. So the question becomes, what kind of mind do you want? One that's certified, approved, and safe? Or one that's dangerous, curious, and free? Because if you want the latter, then school won't give it to you. You'll have to take it for yourself. The curriculum of obedience. Why you're taught to serve, not think. Let's look at what school really teaches. Not just the subjects, but the hidden curriculum, the silent lessons embedded in every rule, every test, every grade. Because beneath the surface of reading, writing, and arithmetic lies something far more insidious, the art of compliance.
You're not going to believe what happened. Tell me everything. I'll show you on Monday.com. So I started the biggest initiative.
You're not just being taught facts, you're being taught how to submit. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. From the moment you enter the school system, you're placed into hierarchies. Not natural hierarchies of wisdom, character, or creativity, but artificial ones based on standardized testing, age, obedience, and conformity. You learn quickly that praise is given to those who follow instructions, not to those who ask uncomfortable questions. You learn that the right answer is the one in the textbook, not the one you discover for yourself, and this is no accident. This is design. Machiavelli wrote that if you wish to control a population, you must shape not just their actions, but their desires. And what better way to do that than to condition children to seek approval from authority figures from the age of 5? You're trained to crave the gold star, the A+, the teacher's smile. And over time, that craving becomes your compass. You stop asking, is this true? And start asking, will this get me a good grade? The system doesn't have to punish rebellion because it has already trained you not to rebel. Let's be honest, what does school reward? Memorization, repetition, quietness, timeliness, predictability. But what does life reward? Adaptability, creativity, emotional intelligence, courage. And yet, none of these things are meaningfully developed in traditional schooling. In fact, they're often punished. A student who questions the logic of a lesson is labeled disruptive. A student who daydreams is diagnosed. A student who refuses to accept the rules is sent to detention. What's being trained here is not intellect, it's docility. And then there's the curriculum itself. Think about it. You're taught history through the lens of the state. You're taught economics without ever discussing who benefits from inequality. You're taught literature with interpretations pre-packaged for you. There's no space for the radical, the mystical, the revolutionary. The curriculum sanitizes knowledge. It presents a world that is orderly, rational, and under control. But the real world is far messier, more unpredictable, and full of power dynamics that school never wants you to see. Why? Because true education threatens the status quo. Machiavelli knew that knowledge in the hands of the free is dangerous. It can topple regimes. It can question dogmas. It can expose the machinery behind the illusion. But knowledge that is compartmentalized, sterilized, and tightly controlled, that kind of knowledge creates perfect servants. People who are competent enough to operate machinery, but not perceptive enough to question who built it. Let me
So yeah, just to expound on a few things, when you look at this school system and how it's designed, as he said, it operates like a prison. You have your detention, because if you act out in the prison, you go to what confinement? Well, in school you have detention, in school suspension, ISS, okay, and it's all about, because they transport prisoners on the bus, they transport, students on the bus. The cafeteria of a school is similar to the cafeteria of a prison, okay, and it's all about conforming, and they're not teaching you, how to be debt free. They're not teaching you life skills, okay? They're not teaching you ownership, okay, in school. They're teaching you, all right, that success, okay, is what, man? Making someone else rich, okay? Which is the corporate world, all right? Going to work in anywhere in these factories or whatever. But it's all about, because you take the mindset of school everywhere you go. That's why they have it set up. You go to school Monday through Friday, off on the weekends. Most jobs, all right, are Monday through Friday, off on the weekends. Okay, you have a set lunchtime in school. You have a set lunchtime at work. Okay, you have a set time to take a break at school, set time to take a break at work. Okay, you're off for the same holidays. School you off. Certain holidays. Work you off certain holidays. So it's all keeps you in this system until you die. Okay, it's all indoctrination, man. You learn history. He tells you who the heroes of history are. Okay, he doesn't tell you the facts about history. He tells you who he wants you to look at as heroes. Okay, and this whole school system is built. Which let's go here real quick, and we'll go back to the video. But when you go here, all right, let's go to the chat. All right, so I asked it was okay. So I asked it. Let me see. What is it? When you go here, I said the modern schools in the West go back, all right, to the Greeks and the Romans. Okay, and it says yes, modern schools in the West do trace, all right, some of their roots back to the educational system of ancient Greece and Rome. All right, but there were many layers of transformation over the centuries. Here's a brief overview how that connection works. Okay, because when you go into this whole school system, even co-education, where the men and women are in school together, that goes back to Greco-Rome. Okay, and what would you learn in Greco-Rome? You will learn Greek, medicine and philosophy. Okay, you will learn the gods of Rome and Greece. Okay, you will learn, the principles, okay, of the Greco-Roman Empire. You see, so when you go into let's go here. Jump down. Okay. Yeah, it says I asked it, was the modern school system created to produce workers instead of thinkers? Okay, because like you go to the Greco-Rome, they would indoctrinate their, capture people to be Roman like, so you've been indoctrinated to be anti-Messiah in this society. That's why, you look at society now, there's no reverence for a higher power because you're not trained in it. Okay, you're trained into what, man? Self worship, or worship of status. Okay, worship of achievement. Okay, and it says, this is a great and important question, and the short answer is yes. To a significant extent, the modern school system was designed to produce disciplined, obedient workers than independent thinkers. But it's more complex than just that. The industrial roots of modern schooling in the 19th and early 20th centuries, especially in Europe and the United States, mass public education systems expanded rapidly, and they were strongly, influenced by the needs of industrial, economies. Okay, they were strongly influenced by the needs of industrial, economies. Okay, standardized curriculum. Everyone learned the same basic skills: reading, writing, math. All right, fixed schedules and bells, mimicking the factory model, signaling when to start, stop, and take breaks. Age-based grading, like an assembly line, students move through grades in batches. School emphasized punctually, discipline, and following instructions. This wasn't an accident. Industrial, leaders and governments wanted a workforce that could follow orders, be punctual and consistent, handle repetitive tasks, read instructions, and do basic math. Okay, you see. So this system, was created to create workers, for corporation. Okay, you're trained, to be a laborer for the super rich and the elite. Okay, even if you have a high paying job, well, your high paying job benefits the elites way more than it benefits you. Okay, and all you're gonna have to pass down, okay, is a mindset to the next generation to do what you did. Okay, but to say it's not a system that creates, that's meant for you to create wealth. All right, it's not a system that's meant for you to be independent in any type of way. Okay, to have any type of autonomy in any type of way. Okay, it's a system that's created for you to continue, all right, just to be a cog in the machine. Okay, a battery. All right, you're being trained to how to be an operator as a battery in this system, man. Okay, and now he wants to take it a step further and go digital. Okay, you see, because yep. And when you go on, let's go back to the video. Mm-mm.
Let me ask you something. When you were in school, were you ever taught how to challenge authority without being punished? Were you taught how to navigate moral complexity? Were you challenged to construct your own philosophy of life? Or were you just fed a string of disconnected facts meant to be regurgitated and forgotten? And here's the real trick. Once you've been through this system long enough, you begin to internalize it. You don't need a teacher anymore to tell you what to do. You do it to yourself. You censor your own thoughts. You silence your own doubts. You start managing your life like a permanent student, always waiting for permission, always terrified of being wrong. That's the true success of the system. Not just that it controls behavior, but that it shapes identity. Machiavelli warned us that those in power will always seek to mold the minds of the people. But the most effective rulers are the ones who can make you believe that your chains are your choices. And school, under the guise of opportunity, teaches you to love those chains, to measure your worth by test scores, to equate success with compliance, to view rebellion as immaturity rather than insight. So, what happens when a mind shaped by obedience is released into the world? It doesn't create, it consumes. It doesn't question systems, it becomes a gear in them. It doesn't seek truth, it waits to be told what truth is. And that's not education, that's programming. If you want to reclaim your mind, the first step is to recognize the lie that school is not neutral, that learning is not obedience, that the curriculum was never designed to make you free. Because once you see that clearly, you can begin to unlearn what was imposed on you and start learning what actually matters. Learning to be useful, how the system trains you to serve power, not purpose. When we talk about usefulness, it sounds like a virtue. We all want to be useful, right? We want to contribute, to matter, to be needed. But have you ever stopped to ask, useful to whom and for what purpose? Because usefulness, when defined by someone else, can become the most subtle form of slavery. That's exactly what the school system does. It molds you not to discover your own purpose, but to fulfill someone else's. You're not educated to become a thinker, an artist, a rebel, or a self-aware human being. You're trained to become a function, a cog, a compliant worker who keeps the machine running, never daring to question who built it or why. Machiavelli understood power better than
Want to help drive America's technological edge? Alumni Ventures U.S. Strategic Tech Fund gives you access to startups pioneering innovations that will shape the strategic technologies of our nation.
anyone. He saw that the most effective rulers are not the ones who use brute force, but the ones who make people want to obey. And how do you achieve that? You teach them that their value lies in their utility. You tell them from a young age that their worth is measured by productivity, efficiency, and output. You condition them to believe that being successful means getting a job that pays well, pleases your parents, and fits neatly into existing systems. And once that belief is rooted deep enough, people will police themselves. They'll sacrifice their dreams, their time, their health, not because they were forced to, but because they were taught to believe it was noble. School, under the guise of preparing you for life, actually prepares you to serve, not in the sense of serving humanity or a higher purpose, but in the sense of serving institutions, corporations, bureaucracies. You're taught to optimize your resume, not your soul. You're taught to chase credentials, not wisdom. And the ones who do this best, the so-called top students, are often the ones who've been most thoroughly shaped by the system. They know how to play the game, but they don't know how to question the rules. Let me be brutally honest. The world does not need more obedient workers.
So yeah, it's a precept when you go into the book of Sirach, and it speaks about these things because the devil, you know, like I said, he rewards, compliance, and people, all around the earth, especially in America, bragging about their degrees. Well, that's just the level that you've been indoctrinated. Okay, you brag about having the doctrines where you just been, all right, thoroughly indoctrinated. Okay, a master's degree where you have been, or you reached the master level of being indoctrinated. That's why, people that go to school, a lot of people that go to school, at least, you might look at somebody that didn't finish high school, but they will have a lot more common sense than people, that have all these degrees, man, because they went through so much indoctrination. Now, of course, there's instances where people get degrees and it works out, they make a good income, and that's, that happens, okay, but that's not, all right, the norm. A lot of people go get these degrees and get in debt, okay, and they spend their life paying bills, okay, and they're so indoctrinated that they think, okay, that it's normal, to pay on the house till you die, to pay on the car, all right, finish paying their car off and go get another car, okay. They think it's normal, all right, to to work, eat, sleep, work, eat, sleep, do the same thing, every day, you know they think it's normal, all right, because of the indoctrination, from their youth. Now, when you go into Sirach, all right, 37 and 7, let's get this real quick, because you going to school is like you're going to the council, okay, of the super rich, you know. When you go here, all right, it says every counselor, all right, extolleth counsel, but there is some that counsel for himself. All right, Esau extolleth counsel. He makes it seem, like this great achievement, like I say, to get these degrees, okay, work for these certain corporations and had these achievements and credentials, and you went to this school and that school, and, you know, this and that. So he extols his counsel like, you're getting the best thing that you can get. It's the best decision you can make, all right, with your life, okay, is to tap into his school system, okay. So every counselor, what he saw as a counselor, extolled counsel. So he extolled his counsel, his doctrine. Okay, it's some great thing. But there is some that counsel for himself. But you're not going to school for you, you're going to school for them. Because first you got to go in debt to go to school when you go to college. All right. And then you've been indoctrinated to power, all right, his system, to be a battery in his system, man. Okay. Nothing for yourself. That's why you give your life to the system after you graduate, man. Okay? You see? Verse 8, it says, beware of a counselor and know before what need he have. And see, it says, be careful of a counselor and know before what need he have, man. And the school system was created for industrial purposes, man. Okay, that's why the school system was created for industrial purposes, man. And college is more administrative, okay, and more for a high skilled labor, but it's all for the same thing. High school, you can go get you a basic job in factories and this and that, okay. You see, but you go into the ancient world, men were learning trades and skills at 12, 13 years old, man, okay. And you look at the people in life, that have more freedom, so-called freedom, okay, is those that have actual skill, you know, things that are needed, especially now, being a carpenter or electrician or HVAC, and knowing these things, man. These things are rare, and these people stay busy, man. I've had some work need to be done, man, and hey, these guys are telling me like, look, I'm booked up for the next 2-3 months. Okay, these men with skill, men that didn't go to all these colleges, man. They father taught them a skill, and these men, they be good. They make good, and they're on their own thing for the most part. Okay, so Esau, he needed employees and laborers for his workforce and his corporation. So he's counseling you, all right, with these school systems, to empower his enterprise, man. It says, for he will counsel for himself, least he cast a lot upon thee, man. So these school systems, all right, were meant to churn out obedient workers and laborers, man. Okay, and just like you get the golden star in kindergarten, there's no different than you getting a bachelor's or associate's degree. Okay, Kuma Sum Laude and all these different, valedictorian and all these different things. It's the same thing. It's just this reward system. It's this carrot and stick, okay, method, okay, for you to comply and fit in to his system and don't question, just do, okay. And this is the last, phase of colonialism. Now he wants to go a step further and put a device in you, okay, to have another level of control, man. All right, let's go back to it.
It needs visionaries, artists, healers, philosophers, people who can think independently, feel deeply, and act courageously. But those qualities are not profitable to the system, they're disruptive. And so, instead of nurturing them, school suppresses them. It teaches you to specialize early, to focus on what's practical, to avoid anything that doesn't have a clear economic outcome. You're steered away from the humanities, from introspection, from anything that might cause you to question the very system you're being prepared to enter. Let me ask you, when was the last time you were encouraged to define your own version of success? Not the version your culture, your parents, or your school prescribed, but your own messy, beautiful, terrifying version. Probably never, because if you started asking those questions, you might realize that the whole game is rigged, that what you've been preparing for all these years is not a life of meaning, but a life of utility. And that's the cruel irony. You spend over a decade in school being told that it's for your benefit, that you're being prepared for the real world. But when you finally get there, you realize that you are being prepared to serve something you never chose. Not yourself, not your dreams, but a system that sees you as a resource, not a human being.
And that's why all these jobs, what do you have? HR, human resource, because that's what you are. You're a human resource in this man's system, okay? And it's a wicked system, man. Now humans are a resource, and that's why, part of our blessing, is having the heathens for a possession. Okay. And out of that 1,000 years, they're going to get to enjoy the earth and righteousness, man. Okay. Because at the end of the day, you know, uh, uh, everyone, every nation, even these heathens, they're going to go back into their purpose, and their purpose is to serve us. Okay, and they're going to be able to, enjoy the earth and righteousness. And that's another thing in Esau's system, man. You spend, because I know I used to wake up, it was nighttime, going to this plant, come home, it'll be close to night or sometime night again. Okay, and you might, you do a lesson. Okay, you might do a few push-ups. Okay, and it's time to go to sleep and do it again. Like, you never even get to be in nature. This is a system that rarely allows you to be even in nature, man. Okay, all right, your whole self, is devoted, all right, to making this man rich. Okay, to making this man's system go. Okay, and it's a very miserable system, man. Okay, but the earth was meant to be enjoyed. Yeah, these, and even under us, these heathens are going to work. All right, but it's not going to be, after that 1,000 years, because that 1,000 years is going to be rigorous. Okay, and it's going to be, it's going to be very laborious that 1,000 years, man, especially for Esau. And then he's going to be eradicated. Okay, but then there's going to come a time, when there's going to be a balance. Okay, of servitude, of the heathens, and them being able to enjoy the earth, man. Them being able to tap into life. Okay, this is just Esau creates a nation, a world of workers, and it's just a constant slow death, man. Then the food is poison, so you don't even have the nutrients to replenish yourself, man. People are overweight, all right, but malnourished, man, in this society, man. So you can't even replenish yourself from this labor, man. This is a torturous, okay, kingdom, man. You see? So let's play a little more.
Machiavelli would have seen through this instantly. He knew that power thrives on predictability, that a society full of independent thinkers is a threat to the status quo.
See that guy standing while everyone else is kneeling? That's Jonathan Isaac.
Don't create independent thinkers, create efficient, anxious, obedient workers who mistake their servitude for success, who are too busy proving their worth to ever stop and ask what that worth is based on. And here's the tragedy. Many of us wake up to this far too late. After the degree, after the job, after the mortgage, after the soul has been slowly traded for status, comfort, and a false sense of security, we look at our lives and wonder, how did I end up here? But the better question is, who taught me to want this? Because if you want to reclaim your life, you first have to reclaim your definition of usefulness. You have to stop asking, how can I fit in? And start asking, what am I here to do?
And this is what we found, in the spirit. But first, we had to be loose, okay, from their way of thinking. And that's why Yahweh Shai, what did he teach? Okay. Because we had a lot, to unlearn. Because even you go during this time, all right, now this is Nicodemus, okay, which he was was a Pharisee, so they was real, screnius in the law, so he knew the law, okay, but they knew the law to a fault. They didn't understand, the true spirit of obedience. It wasn't meant to be rigorous. Okay. So when you go to John 3:1, it said there was a man, all right, a Pharisee named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. The same came by Yahushua by night and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher from the Most High, for no man can do the miracles that thou doest, except the Most High be with thee. Yahushua answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of the Most High. Okay, now he was telling this, this Pharisee, which was studied in, the scripture, but he didn't understand. He didn't understand the mysteries. He didn't understand the spirit of the book. Okay, the true wisdom of the book. You see, he didn't understand. The Lord. Okay, was sending Yahweh Shai. All right, as grace. Okay, so people had to be born again to understand, the grace aspect. Okay, and within grace, there's obedience that's required, but not to the letter of the law. Now, in this lifetime, you know, we've been so indoctrinated, with falsehoods that we have to unlearn the falsehoods, okay, of this society and really learn, the righteousness of the scriptures, man. Okay, we had to start from scratch, man, because this devil put so much in the game, not just the school curriculum, man, but feminism, what we thought family was, what we thought a husband was, a wife was, these things. We were so indoctrinated with madness. Okay, what we thought masculinity was, what we thought, we were just all over the place, man. Okay, so we had to unlearn all these things. We had to be born again, okay, and relearn everything, okay, and be unlearn the things that we were taught in this world. Okay, so Yahweh Shah will always speak, you know, about what, man, being born again, being new. Okay, even when you go to the book of Matthew, okay, is it might be two. All right, I think it's Mark too, so like I think it's the book of Mark, you know, book of Mark chapter 2, and yep, this is the book of Mark. All right, chapter 2 and 21. It says, "No man also seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that filleth it up taketh away from the old, and the rent is made worse." Okay, so you can't sew, this new understanding on the old understanding, because it's a clash. It's going to be a tear because they're opposing forces. They're pulling against one another. Okay, the indoctrination of this world and the true understanding, the wisdom of Yahweh Shai, all right, they pull against one another. So it'll tear. Okay, so you have to completely, all right, start from scratch. Like sewing the garment from scratch, man. None of the old, all right, can be mixed with the new. Okay, the old has to be completely discarded, and we have to start from scratch, with the new, and that's why even you try to apply, all right, because you try to apply that old, indoctrination, with the truth, whether you get a clash, okay, it don't work. You see, and the perfect example is that nigga Alazar. Okay, he's a chief priest, but now he's at no jumper begging for a job. Okay, he tried to mix the old with the new, so now, all right, it's just ripped completely. Okay, so now he's just all over the place, man. Okay, it's a perfect example of that. It says, "And no man put a new wine into old bottles, else the new wine don't burst the old bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put in new bottles, man." Everything has to be poured out that we've been indoctrinated with. Everything has to be poured out, and everything has to be new, made new. Okay, and this is what Yahweh Shai taught, man, because we come from heavy indoctrination, man. Okay, and you can have these emotions and feelings and what you think, and you think you're justified, but that's that old indoctrination. Okay, which is demonic. Okay, so this is why a large part of this truth is us becoming what those new creatures. You see, all right. So I think that's the point. All right. Uh, I thought that was interesting. Because understanding, what the devil, the more we understand, what's been done to us, all right, as a people, especially us as a people, because we've been indoctrinated with the most destructive culture that it is. The world's been indoctrinated, know, and westernization, okay, is heavy indoctrination, you know. But within westernization, this devil gave us something destructive, you know, with black culture and nigger culture, you know. So that's the things that we have to unlearn, okay, and be taught new, you know. So that's the point, you know. Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edify once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful Shalom.